Initially, my business life started when at the age of just under 15, coming up to 15, I'd read in the Financial Times, which I used to deliver. I had a paper round. So this article was about cleaning ovens, and it was about industrial ovens used by big retailers and manufacturers like Hovis and Walls and other big oven users, and it was about cleaning them. And one of the big problems was cleaning ovens when they were hot, to save the downtime of switching them all down and starting again, really. Modern day ovens fire up instantaneously, but that wasn't always the case. And I'd read this article. I was sort of 14 and a half, going on 15, and didn't think any more of it. And then subsequent to that, I used to be a big reader of the Exchange and Mart, which was a magazine that, in a paper format that had everything for sale, from dogs, cats, sheds, lawnmowers, to cars and vans. And there was an ad in the shape of a cartoon in the Exchange and Mart, and it was a lady spraying this thing on a domestic oven, this fluid, and it said, clean your oven whilst it's hot. It was aimed at the housewife in this, and I read that and I thought that would be quite good. If that looks good, I'll maybe ring them up. And I wasn't really thinking about the FT article so much. I was actually thinking maybe I can get an agency and I can flog it door to door, this fluid. Because at the time I was selling pictures door to door. I was in, from when I was about 12 I used to do this. So I thought, right, okay, maybe I'll ring these people up. Well, of course, I lived in a one-bed council flat with my dad. Our beds were in the same room, side by side, because it was only one bedroom, and we didn't have a carpet, we didn't have a phone for definite, we never had a car, or any of those sort of things. So we didn't have any of that, the luxuries, and I had no idea how to use a phone. I wasn't 15 yet. So I decided that the best thing I could do was maybe I ought to go to the phone box that was the end of the street where my dad lived. And so I did. I wandered up there and thought I'll go and see how you use a phone, because my dad didn't know. He'd never used a phone, although he was in his he was probably then in his 60s, because he was in his 50s when I was born. So I did. I went to the phone box, and in those days you dialed 100 for the operator, and I thought, well, I'll ring the operator and find out how you ring America, because the ad, and this was my problem, the ad, there was an address and a phone number in New Jersey. And I thought, well, how do I ring America? You know, I need to ring these people up. So I rang the operator I dialed 100, and I got through to this operator at an exchange near Bristol. And I got chatting with her and asked her what I did and how I could ring America. And she told me how much money I would need to put in. And during this conversation, she said, well, how old are you? And I don't know, she obviously thought that maybe I was younger than that. In the end, I told her, and I think she thought I was just a kid, and I was just going to, and she'd help me, I think, you know. And she told me to go and get the right amount of coins, and so I toddled off I went and got some cash that I had, because I always had money, because I used to do so many jobs, so I always had, in a childlike way, some money. And I wandered up to Lipton's then. It was sort of a forerunner. It was sort of like co-op. And I got money changed. I got the notes changed to these coins. And I go back to the phone box, and she told me to ring the operator again, and I'd get through, and she'd help me. Well, when I rang, she wasn't the operator I got through to, but they went and found her. Her name was Joyce Thompson. And they found Joyce and brought her to the phone. I think she was surprised, because I think she thought, well, you know, I didn't think this kid would come back, but I did. And I said, she said, well, look, this is what you need to do. And I said, well, I can't put the coins in the box, because if I put the coins in the box, they're going to know I'm ringing from a phone box. And she said, oh, I can get over that. I'll tell you how much you need for a 4-minute call. You put the coins in, you press the button, they'll drop into the box, and then I'll put you through subsequent to that. So they won't know you're in a coin box. And that's what she did. And I guess the rest is history. I got through to a guy in the States. He wasn't keen on giving me any rights to, I said, I can be your agent. And and I said, if you send me the formula, I'll make it up in Britain, because, you know, and I can sell it. And he said, you know, well, what's the name of your you know, who are you? And I just out the blue said, easy clean. I really didn't even have a clue. I hadn't thought about that. And so that's, in the end, he wouldn't give me the formula. And I decided that I would spend time talking about the States to him. And so we developed a conversation, and I would ring him over maybe the next 3 or 4 months, mainly talking about the US and what it was like, and I'd like to come over and all those sort of things. He didn't know how old I was until about 7 or 8 years after that. And I used to get access to the phone box, bearing in mind I still wasn't 15. I was 15 in the August, and this was coming up towards that. And I decided I would have to keep this phone box for myself, so I taped the phone box off with masking tape and had an out of order sign on the side, and I used to sit by the side of the phone box, often in the rain. It rains quite a lot in Bristol. And I would put this chair, we had this wooden chair by the phone box, and I would wait with the umbrella, because Joyce had told me that you can receive calls to a phone box. So of course I was paranoid that Barry in the States would ring my office, which was this phone box, and somebody else would answer it because they were in there trying to make a call. So I would put an out of order sign, so I had this office. So that's how it started. That's where I started. I subsequently sold that business when I was 19. Absolutely. The UK needs entrepreneurs, and it needs new entrepreneurs, and it needs young entrepreneurs, because with the internet, young people understand the internet better than people my age. They've been brought up on it, and it's part of what they do. And I think that you know, there's a lot of opportunities to get started with lower. When I started, you needed capital more than you do today. The power today is knowledge. It isn't really necessarily capital, it's knowledge. So a young girl or a young guy living in circumstances where they don't have a lot of money, they don't have access to contacts through parents and things, but they do have the ability often to use smartphones, Google, and get information. And I think you can start a business today with less capital. So I think, you know, young people wanting to get going, I don't think it matters whether you've got a university education. I don't think it matters how old you are. I mean, after all, in football terms, you wouldn't not play Wayne Rooney because he was 17. If he's good enough, he's old enough. And that applies to entrepreneurs also. Yeah, passion and enthusiasm. One of the most important, I think probably the most important, is to be enthusiastic and passionate about what you want to do. So I think starting out, you're better to try and find something that you really love to do, and then try to find a way of monetizing it. Try to think, is there a way I can make it, I can commercialize this? Because the problem with business is, if you set out to just create a business to make money only, the problem is at some point during that period of time, you'll wake up in the morning, you've had a row with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, your wife, whatever it might be, your mum, your dad, and you think, oh, I can't be bothered, I don't want to go to work. But actually, if what your work is your passion, it's your salvation, you want to go anyway. Someone said to me recently, you know, what do you do it for? And I said, for me, everything is about freedom and dealing with people I like. I only work with people I like. I only deal with people that I trust and I like. And I think it's important to have that passion and enthusiasm. So my advice to someone, find something you really love and then be passionate about it. And on the down days, the days when it's wet, windy and things aren't looking so good, you'll still want to go to work. Yeah, that's a good question. And it's something I've thought about periodically myself. I don't really have human role models. I wish I could say someone, but I don't really. What I have got is a business model, and that's the John Lewis business model. Inclusive rather than exclusive. I'm a great believer in collaboration, and that includes all the people running through the vein of the business, partners that are involved with us, telling people the way it is, you know, so that we can all understand each other. So collaboration, I think that John Lewis, where everyone takes part ownership, we like to include anyone that's working with us in the business as a partner. Although maybe I don't deny that I would earn more than a forklift truck driver in any of our businesses, but nonetheless, he also, or she, are human beings with their own rights, with their own and we ask for people to contribute, you know, and so they get the same bonus level as the MD of that business or the chief executive. If it's 10% is going to be on your salary, then it's pro rata. I mean, it's 10% of your salary. We don't say, well, it's 2% for the forklift truck driver and 10% for the chief exec. The chief exec gains by having a higher salary in the first place anyway. So we try to do it inclusive. So John Lewis is a role model. We elaborate on the John Lewis model. We make it even a little bit more bespoke to what we do. So that's it. As an individual, probably John Lewis when he started. The benefits of, well, self-employment is the best thing in the world if you're successful, and can be the worst thing in the world if you're not. So I think one of the most important things, one of the benefits is you run your own time. But along with that, you have to understand that if you don't turn up, if you don't go to work because you are in control of your time, eventually the work won't be there. So you do have to be disciplined. But in the structure of that discipline comes the ability to manage your own diary, which you wouldn't necessarily have if you were working for someone else. So, but business can be a freedom and it can be a trap. There's no point working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, never seeing your family, or, you know, family are important. So I try, often when I'm traveling, I take family with me. Well, first advice, piece of advice, is always to keep your fixed overheads low. I say this time and time again to everyone because it's the most important thing. Don't go and take on elaborate overheads like offices, cars, leases of equipment or cars or anything like that until you're really ready, because those overheads are fixed monthly and you're going to have to pay them even if the business isn't doing so well. So wait until the business is at a level where you're fairly sure. Try to take leases on offices, go into a serviced office, or make sure the lease has a short period that you can get out of it if things don't work quite as well initially. You know, new businesses, fledgling businesses and mid-term businesses run sometimes into early cash problems because they've taken on too much in the way of fixed overhead. And also watch your non-fixed overhead when you're growing, because the danger side for a business isn't when you're working out the garden shed, your overheads are very low and the business is taking off. It's when you make that next move and you start expanding and the growth. During that growth period, it needs to be funded. And so my advice would be to watch your cash flow during that period, because, you know, you want to go and win new customers, but that might mean you've got to go to Manchester and you've got to stay overnight and you've got to buy whoever it is that you're meeting an expensive restaurant, in a restaurant, expensive meal. Those were overheads you never had when you were in the garden shed before you started to grow. So my advice would be to be careful of that, but fix on growth, and always remember that with no sales, you have no business. You have to sell, whether it's a service, whether it's a commodity, doesn't matter what it is. If you don't sell it, you have no business. No point making something you don't sell. We are investors ourselves. We are always looking for new concepts, new inventions, businesses that want to grow, that are underfunded, that might benefit from our involvement. We're not really passive investors, we're active investors. So it's unlikely that we would ever just give someone money. The money would be tempered with an involvement, because unless we're part of it, we just don't do it. We're not really people that just want to put money into a business and say, well, give us a shout when you've made a profit and we'll have our money back. And interest. We're interested in helping develop that and being passionate about it. Most of the things we get involved, well, all the things really that we get involved with tend to be businesses that we are interested in. There's an intellectual interest there. because without that, there's not the passion that I talked about earlier in this interview. To develop the passion, to develop the drive, you have to have an interest. So for us, we will look at anything really across the board, from new technology to green technology, to businesses that are web-based, and some businesses that are old economy. Things like existing bookshops and things like that, that people would say, oh, well, that, but where there's a niche product or a niche market. So that's another thing for us. We're always interested to hear from people, and they can get in touch with us easily on that. Read my book. I suppose eventually, but today, well, you asked me. Yeah, to read a book, if not my book. You can find most things by either going on Google, but it is quite good to actually go and get it. You can go to the libraries and borrow a book, but buy a book, and there are some good business books out there. There aren't enough books out there that tell people how to really do it. What they do is they tend to be either too academic in nature or too elementary, and sometimes by people that haven't. I'm not being rude to anyone that's, but people need to have done it and practiced it and lived it really. When I started Easy Clean, as an example, I was under 15. This is a sort of an illustration to answer your question. I didn't have a car. Obviously, I was not 15, so I couldn't drive. I couldn't even have a motorbike because I wasn't 16. And so I had a problem, because I had created a business. Once I got the fluid and I started cleaning, I created this business that needed me to get places, because I went on with Easy Clean to develop cleaning contracts, and I got cleaning contracts for big hotels. So now I've got a problem. By then I was maybe 15 and a half, 16, but I didn't have a car. I didn't have a license. So how do I do it? Being entrepreneurial, so say, how do I get around that? Well, I found someone with a van, and I did a deal with him so that he would drive me in his van, and he would drive me and all my equipment and all my people that work for me wherever. And I employed him as a driver, but I hired his van at the same time. I couldn't drive because I wasn't old enough, but he could. And so you've got to be entrepreneurial in approach. And I think thinking laterally, think outside. Well, to take the phrase really with the phone box is thinking outside the box. I did a lot of my thinking outside the box, not inside the box. And that's what you've got to do. Yeah, I think some people are born with it. I think undeniably, to use that football analogy again, anyone would think I was a fanatic. I'm not, honestly. But Georgie Best was probably a player that was born with individual flair and ability, and probably Ronaldo in today's language. But the reality is, it can be. You can get a situation where you start thinking outside the box. It's important. You can learn to be entrepreneurial. Be cheerful about it. Be optimistic. Entrepreneurs, generally, their glasses are half full, not a half empty. And you have to have that half full approach. And if you do that and you think, and if you've got a product you think is good, be enthusiastic about it. Go and tell people about it. As long as it's legal and it's genuine and you're being genuine, tell everyone. So I think people can learn to be entrepreneurial, yeah. Maybe there are some people who've got a little bit more talent than others in that field, like they might in pure mathematics. Maybe someone's just really good at pure mathematics. But you can learn to count, even if you're not brilliant at pure mathematics. Same thing. That's a good question, and funnily enough, it's one that was asked of me this morning by a young entrepreneur in a discussion I had with her. And my advice is always, first of all, to look within yourself to see if there's anything you can sell or you can sell or you can even refinance to raise the money, because raising money from banks today isn't as easy as it was. It may get easier again at some point, but at the moment it isn't so easy. So let's take a proper example of someone that maybe, let's take a small example. They need 20,000. If you need £500,000, that probably won't apply. This probably won't apply. But if you need £20,000 or 10,000 or even £30,000, you might look within yourself. Maybe you are 27 and you're driving a car that's worth 12,000 quid. You don't really need that. Maybe you sell that and buy one for 4. You've raised 8,000. You haven't had to dilute by selling equity. You haven't had to borrow the money from the bank, so thereby putting your business in danger. You've got 8,000 of capital and you've still got a car. Not quite as good as the one you had, but probably good enough. So things like that, and trying to taking on, go and do a lot of the jobs yourself and try and keep your overheads low. Try and borrow as little as possible, and only take investors, me included, if you really need to. If you don't, why dilute? And that's why I think it's important to take an investor that is an investor and is active rather than an investor that is passive. My advice would be, if someone offers you £50,000 investment and is not active and isn't knowledgeable in your field, but someone else offers you 25,000 and is active, well connected and knows your field, take the 25,000, because the knowledge and the ability to understand you is worth a lot more than the other 25,000, and that person might well invest that other 25,000 later on, or know someone else that will. So I think those are important points to make. Try to avoid borrowing and try to avoid investment if you can. It's a good exercise because it trains you to think outside the box. Instead of just saying, well, I need a bank loan or I'm going to get an investor, think outside the box. Is there anything else you could do to get that capital? Funding the growth with unquestionably is the difficult thing and the most dangerous thing, because you have to step outside of your comfort zone. You have to do that to grow. And so it's all about trying to understand how you're going to take that step. You do need to, I think Warren Buffett was once said that, risk is something that's taken by people that don't know what they're doing. It's important, you cut your risk down by understanding what it is you're doing. So again, it's back to knowledge, which is what I said earlier. Understand your business. A very famous businessman who I won't mention his name because he might not appreciate it, but he said to me once that that there are many problems in business, but always understand that it's often easier to do business with more noughts on the end than it is with less noughts, because it takes as much time to do something with that makes £1,000 as it does to do something that makes £100,000. Time is still similar, so you have to close those gaps. And his advice to me at the time, and I met this particular person when I was 20 at Hambros Bank. Hambros used to be quite a famous. I don't think they exist today. At least I don't bank with them. But they used to be quite a famous private bank. And he said to me, the problem is that people go out and they go into businesses outside their knowledge zone, and that you should always stick within your knowledge zone. And I thought that was quite good at the time. But over the years, I've refined that. What I would say to people is that you can step outside of something you're doing today, but you have to first of all learn about what next you're going to do. So with us, because we invest in so many different businesses and in so many different areas of business, and also locations, we investigate thoroughly where we're going. So if I was suddenly going to create a tailor's business throughout the UK, I don't know enough about that, so I would want to learn, and I would give myself enough time to read investigate and understand everything to do with that business before I even made any thought about entering it. Because it's better to make your mistake on paper than it is to make your mistake in practice. On paper, you screw the paper up and you've wasted some time. In practice, you can screw your life up. It's better to screw the paper up than screw your life up. So investigate.